This woman who's up next makes football analysis look very, very easy when it's not. The data side of everything. Her name is Cynthia Frelund. She is from the NFL Network, data and analytics expert for the NFL Network, as well as her own clubhouse numbers game, which I think is just dynamic. A lot of people check her out for that analysis. We like to welcome Cynthia this morning early on to talk a little NFL. Morning, Cyn.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Brockman, I haven't seen you and talked to you in so long.
Hey, what's happening?
I love your cute baby.
How you been?
It's my favorite to watch.
Thank you.
I'm good.
Thank you.
Everybody loves Brockman's cute baby because it's kind of like
the cutest baby on the planet.
It's a baby version of Brockman. That's why, you know.
That's what I've heard.
You know, no hair.
He's got more hair than I've got. I mean, come on.
He's definitely yours.
So, we've watched kind of this offseason play out. Of course, the discussion has been around Wilson and Watson. Where will they go? But really, the true numbers laid out with free agent quarterbacks that were kind of under the radar. How do you think free agency has played out in terms of the quarterback position so far this NFL offseason?
So first, I don't think we're done. I think we're going to see I think Deshaun Watson lands in a different spot. I think we might see some other things just totally come out of left field. Some interesting big names that I'm hearing are maybe on the move, or at least potentially being explored being on the move that I haven't heard about until just about 2 weeks ago. So I don't think we're done yet, but I do think that it's been fun to see. I like where Cam landed. I think it's a great fit for the Patriots. Brockman, I know, well, we can talk. And then I really like where Ryan Fitzpatrick is. I think that's going to be interesting, too. I think Washington's the team to beat in that division. And right now I know that Dallas is like kind of, according to some people, listed as like, you know, the team that's going to win the division. But I think it's Washington's to lose.
You know, you referenced her there early on, some big moves. I mean, could you kind of give us maybe a little bit of a hint of what you're hearing possibly?
You know, you saw a lot of people restructuring their contracts in order to accommodate the lowered salary cap. And that's interesting because you kind of need to do that for many teams because we all know, like, cap dynamics are, like, pretty much like this weird, like, black box of, you know, a lot of different things that no one understands. Like, what's harder to understand, how the NFL cap works or what an NFT is. So those two things are kind of on par for me right now. But ultimately, you know, you haven't seen some guys restructure that you thought would. You know, anywhere that a big name guy that's not Patrick Mahomes or, you know, anyone that's, you know, because he just did his deal last year, but anyone that's a big name that hasn't restructured, I'm just a little like, what are we looking at here? That's kind of that's what I've been hearing at least.
What do you think about the Tyreek Hill comments about how hey, I signed a contract and isn't willing during a salary cap strapped year to accommodate the Chiefs who have really stood by him. Was that interesting to hear happen, or are more players apt to do that when these restructuring asks are made?
In all honesty, I think that shows a reflection of Tyreek's need to have representation that can help him understand how things work a little better, because the cap will go up next season. So allowing some flexibility this season kind of gives you a better opportunity to, you know, you can restructure in a lot of different ways. You can reflect a greater increase next season, for example. But I think what you're seeing here is potentially one of the pitfalls of not having representation that, you know, I don't know who his representation is, but I think he's not necessarily with ones that have helped him the most. So I think that this reflects a misunderstanding between what the ask is and what the potential outcomes are.
We're talking to Cynthia Frelund from the NFL Network analytics expert, Numbers Game on Clubhouse as the host there as well. You released your mock draft 1.0 a little while back. I wanted to kind of go through that with you because you took a view from it from a different angle, and that was what these teams needed in terms of getting more wins the next season. And I had an honest to God question for you in the past, and you enlightened me on why these things are, but I think our viewer would like to know too. Why don't teams draft this way anyway? Because don't they want to win more games? What's the point? And your answer back was interesting. I think our viewers will take a lot into that.
Sure. So we created a mock that was, because a lot of people, so first of all, most people, insiders say, they have to do a mock based on, they kind of call around. It's more what they're hearing. They're reporters. They're trying to get it right so that a fan base can be like, okay, we're really looking at so-and-so or not. But we took a different approach, when I'm talking to my editors and how the analytics mock would go, because, at the end of the day, I don't want to have to call people for that, because the analytics people they don't make that decision. So a lot of times what we did was figure out, all right, a lot of times, what would get you the wins in 2021? There's free agency out there. Remember, this draft, the mock 1.0 came out prior to free agency starting. I'll update it next week, and once the free agents are there. But a lot of times, people are in different, coaches and front office members are in different cycles of their potential contracts. Some have continuity, like the Patriots, and so they can take a year like last year and rebuild. Other people, they don't have that luxury. They get maybe 2 seasons at the most to prove who they are. So they've got to take their risk with a quarterback or not, right? And then they have to take their risk with their pass rusher or not. And it's kind of dealing with the legacy contracts of what was left to them before, the mess they're in now. I mean, the Lions are going to be terrible, and they're not making great decisions left and right, but they have a little bit more rope, because it's not necessarily that they're asked to win in 2021. Though I would argue that you probably want to try to select for more wins than you think, because it's very hard to build a culture and rebuild a culture of keep losing. So at the end of the day, it's trying to navigate where people are in their front office climate. And by the way, the other thing that stinks about any analytics draft, I would want to make a trade at almost every position to get it super to match the value really well, like the stock market would with a price. But we said no, they would lose their mind trying to edit that if I traded out every position. So that's how it worked out.
We're talking to Cynthia Frelund from NFL Network, analytics expert, numbers game on Clubhouse host as well. Take a look at that. The Russell Wilson talk. So I got a lot of backlash on Wednesday because I didn't think he was going anywhere. We had an expert on telling me that there's a good possibility, because of the friction still between him and Pete Carroll, that could be a possibility. Jeff Darlington from ESPN surprised me a little bit and said there's a good possibility that this move could still happen this offseason. If not, for sure next season. Now, I can understand a year from now, but the talk continues. Is it just a media concept, or are you hearing something? And is that still a possibility for somebody like the Bears or some other team out there that could look to make a trade to get Russell Wilson this season?
I don't know about the Bears. They don't seem to have enough juice to be able to get a guy like Russell Wilson, but I do think anyone who's a big name who hasn't renegotiated their contract to help their team out, except for Patrick Mahomes because he signed that really team-friendly deal, I don't think that anything's safe or finalized until the kind of restructures come in. I think if you're not restructuring, you're not necessarily safe yet. You're not safe to think that's your quarterback yet. Am I speaking in double speak well enough? My codified language. It's not good. I'm a math person, not a attempted reporter. I'm not trying to report anything, but I do think that if you haven't restructured, it is still a possibility.
All right, so give us Bills fan or Bears fans out there some hope with Andy Dalton. How did you like that move from Dallas as a free agent to be QB1 now in Chicago?
Certainly not sexy, and their Twitter account can say he's QB1, but I don't know if I believe it at all. I mean, we've seen their Twitter account say it before. Also, I think most people know, the people who run the social in teams, they're not sitting with the GM. I don't think Ryan Pace called up the Twitter person hey, 23-year-old that runs our Twitter account, please post it. So, it is what it is. I think we'll still see some things move around. I don't think the Bears are done yet by any stretch of the imagination. And I think they got to take a swing because I don't think they have a lot of rope left there. I mean, Ryan Pace made some interesting trades. The Trubisky one didn't work out, obviously. And so I think they're on the chopping block. So I think when people are on the chopping block, they have to take bigger swings.
We're listening to Cynthia Frelund from the NFL Network. You gave Brock Shady here, Chris Brockman, a little high five with the Cam Newton signing. You liked that. Tell us why you liked that. I was surprised by it. I thought he looked a sham of himself or a shell of himself late in the year. to see him come back, that surprised me a little bit. Why was that a good signing for you?
Well, first of all, it's the return on investment. So, number one, before COVID hit, he was looking great. I mean, people were like there were look, Patriots fans can be hilarious, and they were like, he's going to be the MVP, like after week 2.
Yeah, I wanted to give him a $100 million contract after 3 weeks.
After the Seahawks game, for sure, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
I loved that. That was so fun. I love a good overreaction. But so I don't think he's done yet. They also reinforced their O-line. Sure, they lost Joe Thuney to the Chiefs, but okay, they reinforced most of their O-line. They got 2 tight ends, one inline, one outside, and you can interchange those 2. That's great. They're kind of reloading in a lot of different ways. They're setting it up for a more mobile and to take advantage of the mobility of Cam Newton, but also they're leaving themselves open. His contract was peanuts. It wasn't very big at all. So they're able to take what they've got left over from that, and they can do a lot of different things. They have tons of flexibility, and that's really what you want to do. Your backup plan, it's just like everything else. Like if Cam Newton is your potential backup plan, like you could bring in one of these rookies and train said rookie. You have so much flexibility, and by the way, you got so much better in free agency just all around. So you're really it's just kind of nothing but upside. And by the way, I was looking on the powers that be, because, Rich and I like to talk about things like that. The powers that be. Where are we getting these numbers? I don't know, but Rich and I love it, and it's Rich's show, so we got to say, right now, some people don't think the Patriots will make the playoffs. And I say, what? I think you should go tell those people that that's not true. And you should tell them, the same way we tell them on game day morning.
Well, that would be an interesting AFC East if the Patriots are back in the mix this year. When I saw the contract, and at first when it was announced, all headlines, $14 million, I was like, it's a lot of money for a guy that looked like he was really struggling down the stretch. But we'll see. They can make a lot of moves. What they do have to do, and I would expect you would agree with me, is that this draft is incredibly important because of how they've missed the last few years in the April draft. With players like N'Keal Harry and the 2 tight ends they drafted a year ago because they had to go out and get 2 tight ends in free agency this year.
See, I would say that what they've done this year more than ever, there's so much uncertainty with the draft because you don't know what you're getting from these players.
Right.
You didn't have a regular season last year. Many of what we believe are the consensus top players didn't even play last season. They opted out. So, and which may or may not be smart. We have no idea. There's no data to support that. But what the Patriots did was they signed, just like they normally do. They did spend more money than they usually do. But what the Patriots do so well is they take a player who we all perceive to be average or maybe a bit above average, but then in their system, they outperform all of their contract needs. So they take the average guys, use them in a way that makes them play above averagely. That's good English. And then ultimately win because they're just surprising us with people we didn't even think about. So they kind of made it so that the draft is less important for them. It's all upside at this point. And they're not picking high enough to really take a big swing and a miss because unless you're picking in the top 5 or you're going to trade up to the top 5, we have no idea this season. It's going to be trickier than ever. And we don't know many seasons. There's no surefire thing. We can pretend that we think that Trevor Lawrence is the best thing ever, but until he starts playing and gets in the system and understands and learn, who knows, right? Until it happens, it happens. And there's no such thing as a sure thing. So I think what they've done is really smart. They've minimized all of the downside of the draft and turned it into all upside. And I'm not a Patriots fan. I'm not a Patriots fan, but I'm a really big fan of their strategy this offseason.
Well, that's good to hear for Patriots fans out there. I got a couple questions left for Cynthia Frelund here from the NFL Network before we get you out of here. One, TJ here is a diehard Cowboys fan. There has to be some analytics around, major injuries and coming back. They just gave him the Cowboys gave him a back-breaking contract, $160 million. What are the analytics around Dak Prescott coming back and being effective for this team?
Tell me something good, Cynthia.
I didn't know I was going to be able to talk about joints today, but I love it. Dak Prescott has one of those bodies. Look, there's a lot of you can aggregate injury data, but we all know that if I get injured and I'm 5'6", and I don't weigh as much as you, so if I get injured and you get injured, we're going to have different recovery rates, opportunities. If someone 300-pound hits me, that's going to feel different than if they hit you, etc. So if you look at what Dak's body is like, he has like the perfect body to come back from an injury really strong. He's got thicker base, meaning he's got like more muscular legs, hips, knees, ankles, and he's really got that like nice, like he's not as fragile, right? A Teddy Bridgewater has a more fragile base. He's built more petite. I'm not saying he's petite. It's not there's nothing, I'm not using that in the pejorative. He has thinner joints. Dak Prescott has thicker joints. I know because actually one of my best analytics people in like the entire world works for the Cowboys. And one of the reasons, remember, we all didn't think Dak was going to be this monster getting this contract when he was coming out of college. My guy told me this guy has the best ankles, hips, and knees we've seen. He's in great shape to be able to, sustain some hits, even though we have a good O-line. This is a guy who can keep on getting hit and is more durable. So that's a really strong indicator for success in coming back from injury. It doesn't mean it's perfect. It doesn't mean it's right. It just means he has a higher probability of success than other people because of his build. And, that just gives him he'll have to do the work and obviously his rehab. And we all assume he's going to do that, right? But just his natural God-given body structure gives him an advantage.
There you go, Cowboys fan. TJ, you feel good about that?
I didn't expect to be talking about Dak's joints today, but hey, I'm here.
You watch him. You watch him you watch him in pregame doing that little hip turn.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, Cynthia's put me at ease a little bit. I'll say that.
Well, let's go down south a little bit further. New Orleans. Does the analytics bear out for Taysom Hill as the guy, or maybe a rejuvenated Jameis Winston? Where's it looking there for the Saints quarterback position?
So luckily it's Sean Payton who figures it out. Do I think, like, if I were talking about fantasy football, I don't want to touch anyone on this team, or maybe even like many of their I don't know how to navigate this one yet. I do think Sean Payton will cook something up that we will all find very interesting. Probably not necessarily like the one quarterback Taysom Hill situation, not necessarily the Jameis Winston situation, because we know who Jameis is. He's shown us he's got pluses and he's got minuses. And what Sean Payton and coaches like Sean Payton can do are create opportunities for those pluses to be accentuated and the minuses to be sort of, cushioned. And it doesn't mean it's perfect. It doesn't mean it's right. I don't know exactly how it's all going to net out there. This could be a trickier year to be a Saints fan just in general, but you always knew it would be after Drew Brees. There's always going to be like some sort of difference and drop-off, but I think it's going to be interesting and fun to watch. I don't know how effective it'll be in that division when you've got you've got Tom Brady in that division, and, maybe Carolina will do something interesting. We don't know who Carolina's quarterback's going to be, so they could come out and surprise us, but I'll be interested to see how it goes. But I think in that division, I think it could be less of a sure thing for the Saints to make the playoffs.
All righty. Cynthia Frelund from NFL Network, analytics expert. Tell us a little bit about your new Clubhouse show, how people can view, how people can be a part of it, and talk to us a little bit about it.
So every Thursday, 10 a.m. On the West and 1 p.m. on the East. And basically, I'm trying to talk about, we'll talk about football because that's my home, but also talk about all the numbers that you need to know and you can use for the week. So next week we'll get into some Masters, and so maybe my friend Ryan Leaf will come on and talk to me about who he likes in golf and relate it to numbers. We did a bunch of tournament numbers and free agency kind of fallout this past week. Some great different guests from different sports, just because I've got all these numbers and they're flying around, and somebody should make good use of them if I can.
Well, good. I will. I'll definitely pay attention to that if you're going to get into the Masters talk. I have talked to Rich Eisen about this. Chris Brockman and I going down as analysts at Augusta every year to be on site.
It's the perfect.
I think it's a perfect fit. So I appreciate I
appreciate you. Yeah. We could I feel like you could set up at a hole and you could, interview some of the people that walk by. You could just ask them random questions, because I know that Chris Brockman's super funny and people super kind of unexpected things come out of his mouth. So that would be great.
I'd get his better half to give me to write me some roasts, and that's what I would do. Yes. Yeah. All right, everybody. Cynthia Frelund.
Show with her last year. Favorite.
Cynthia Frelund, everybody from the NFL Network. Thanks again, Cyn.
Anytime.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.